Sergio loved long pictures. He loved long sequences and long pictures. To me, I don't mind a long picture if you've got a lot of story. But if you're just telling a long picture to produce more production value, I think you can shorten some of that down. If you have a really depthy story and you need to have that time, then that's fine. That's where he and I would differ, I suppose.
One of the reasons his pictures are so long is that he had a narrative that was difficult to break into and recut and so forth. His narrative had a smoothness to it, but it needed length because that's the way he operated. You know, he never skimped on film in the sense that, oh, I'm going to save film here and make the scene shorter. That never entered his head.
Leone had a great taste for panorama. I mean, he really loved wide open spaces, and his camera really is often very pulled back and looking at, you know, quite small figures in that landscape. But that led him toward a taste for portraiture as well. I think it's a more vivid contrast between wide and close than any other major director habitually used. I mean, it's an effect people would use in a movie, but he constantly uses it. Big, tight, big, tight. I think it does give an operatic air to his movies. Those close-ups function a little bit like arias do in operas. I mean, suddenly you're very focused on a leading player.
Sergio, one good thing he was great with faces. All those faces, those gypsies that he would use to play the Mexican guys, he didn't just say, get me 4 or 5 people to be in the background. Every one of them had to have a different look.
You have to look at the film carefully. Lee had a tip of a finger cut off. Leone adored that. He had a man with no legs. He would find different people who have suffered in life, and he would focus on that.
You know, when the townspeople are hanging Eli Wallach, there's a lot of tight close-ups of those people watching. And he makes a kind of landscape out of those faces, too. I mean, it becomes a different kind of panorama. That's almost the essence of the Leone style.
Good director should know painting, should know the famous painters or the painters that interest them, and look at them and understand what they're about. There are shots in Leone's pictures that I know were taken from some painting.
Yes, he was very, very conscious of art. He'd see a certain painting and he said, that's the lighting I'd like for this sequence and that sequence. And sometimes he'd show me a picture and say, this is the kind of thing I'd like to duplicate here. But I didn't know he liked opera. I never heard him breaking into any arias of any kind. But he was a guy who was trying to become much more of a big production type director. I think he wanted to be David Lean.
Certainly, he had in his mind the work of the best directors of the world. And he thought that he was a great director himself already. And he was.
Leone had everything in his mind. I never saw him, like Orson Welles when I worked with him. He had diagrams of the costumes and, he had with the shots. He was a terrific artist. Leone had nothing. Didn't even have a script. He never referred to a script. He knew the whole picture. It was planted in his head just as well as he knew the music. These were all dreams he had as a child. He told me. When I was a little child, I dreamed about westerns and heroes and the bad guys. And I would think of these stories, and it made my life interesting. He loved the cowboys, the West, because it had a kind of freedom to express any kind of activity you wanted, good, bad, in between.
Originally, Sergio wanted to have, for a few dollars more, he wanted to have Henry Fonda in Lee Van Cleef's part, because he felt that I had a similarity to Fonda that would have been sort of a father-son, mentor kind of situation. He couldn't get Henry Fonda, and at that time he couldn't get anybody. Nobody knew Sergio, and the dollar pictures hadn't come out. So he goes to California, and he comes back with Lee Van Cleef. I said, Lee Van Cleef, that's interesting. He always had a great face. And I used to see him around at Universal years ago. He was sort of a well-known character actor, worked quite a bit.
And Lee Van Cleef, for the first time in his life, got recognition. He was a star in Italy and made very good money due to Sergio.
I remember that Sergio remarks was, his glance makes holes in the screen.
He was a nice man, quiet. I understand the quiet Western heroes. I don't care if they play bad men.
A lot of the best critical opinion about the Leone Westerns was that they were unconscionably violent. Looking at them today, I don't find them so. There's a lot of build-up to violence. I mean, it takes Leone an endless amount of time to get a gunfight going. I mean, you can see it at the end of Good, Bad, and Ugly. I mean, you know, those guys are circling each other in that graveyard for, I don't know, feels like about 10 minutes before there's finally an exchange of shots. So he liked to build, but once he got to the moment of violence, he was very quick with it. You know, and people are dead. Now, there are certain exceptions. The beating that Eli absorbs in the prison camp sequence in Good, Bad, and Ugly, that's pretty long and vivid and harsh. It's certainly bloody, and it's certainly, you can see the teeth kind of beginning to fly a little bit, but...
My wife couldn't watch that scene, nor could my kids. But I was a medic in the Army for 5 years in World War II. We were taught when soldiers get drunk, you can sober them up very quickly by putting pressure on here's the supraorbital nerve up in here. Each in your skull, there's a little opening with a nerve ending. And if you press hard on it, you'll sober up quickly. So I explained that to Leone, and I explained it to Brega, the big tough guy who's torturing me. I said, make believe you're pressing. Don't press, but make believe. So that's the way we did it. I did get a black eye because I was coming around a pole in the thing, and his fist came too close and clipped me. But as they say, it's all for the good of the movie.
Making action pictures with Italians is dangerous. They don't have the stunt players guild that we have here, which is very careful with issues of safety. It's a miracle nobody actually got hurt on any of those movies. Come right down to it.
Murder, assaulting a justice of the peace, raping a virgin of the white
I once
race.
said to Sergio, when are you going to put cotton in the horse's ears? I'm sitting on the horse, my hands behind my back. This noose is hanging, right? Eastwood leans back and shoots. In the rope, there's a little piece of dynamite, and it explodes, and the horse takes off. I said to Sergio, put the cotton in the horse's ears. That's what they do in Hollywood. He said, no, don't worry about that. Sure enough, Eastwood shoots, the rope breaks, the horse takes off with me on his back, with my hands tied behind me. And he doesn't want to stop. The horse has no idea that he's going to hear that damn sound again. It took me a mile before that horse stopped. I did a scene where I was lying next to a railroad track. I was handcuffed to the man who beat me a lot. And the train is coming toward me, and Leone says, Eli. He always said, Eli, I want them to see it's you. It's not a stuntman. I said, okay. So, action, the train comes. I turn this way, and as I turn, the last car goes past me, and there's a step a metal step out coming from the car that you could step on and get on the train. And I realized that if I had raised my head 4 or 5 inches, I'd be decapitated. So he said, all right, we do it again. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I'll get killed. When I'm searching for the gold, I have to break the bag and the coins fall out. They used an acid which they poured over the bag so that when I did hit it, it would open up. There's a certain soda, Italian soda, lemon soda, that I loved. And it came in a bottle with a little white cap. So I saw it there next to the leather thing, and I grabbed it, I opened it. As soon as it touched my mouth, I knew it was not my favorite lemon drink. It was some kind of poison. The first thing I did was spit. I was furious, and I said to Leone, I'm not going to shoot anymore today. Now, Leone wasn't trying to kill me because I hadn't finished the film yet. Oh, Eli, oh, Eli. They ordered milk, and I drank a quart of milk to neutralize what the acid was. And then I did the scene.
All directors doing historical films make big claims about authenticity. And Leone did. He said, I read all these books about, for example, the prison camp. I mean, he read up a lot on Andersonville. He read up on such history as there was of the Civil War as it was fought in Texas. And there was apparently one minor engagement, nowhere near as spacious as the one that he's giving us.
Look, see that one with a white beard sitting in the wagon? General Sibley. He looks dead.
But I also never really believe directors when they talk about authenticity of a historical kind. I mean, it's not their major business. All a historical film has to be is kind of plausible in terms of its details. The plausibility that's significant is emotional plausibility.
In the old Westerns that I grew up with, Hoot Gibson and Jack Holt, Gene Autry and those people, they never dressed the way you saw them dress in this movie. Never.
When I was at his house, I said, where did you dream up the idea of those long coats, down to the ankles? He said, I'll show you. And he had an American book of the West, and there was a picture of cowboys wearing dusters. Well, of course, they were always in the dust, the rain, and they covered their whole bodies. He also had a shot in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly with a train pulling out. It was an authentic train of that period. In Spain, they had them. And at the end of the train, the last train, had a cannon projecting out of it. I said, where the hell did you dream that up? He said, I'll show you. And there it was in a book about the Civil War.
1/3 of that movie deals with the Civil War in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He took a book by Matthew Brady, which dealt with photos that Matthew Brady took during the Civil War. And if you see there's a scene where a train is pulling into a station and a man is on the cow catcher in the front with his arms spread, he says, I'm a Confederate spy. And you know they're going to kill him. There's a scene where a group of soldiers marching with a man, they lay a coffin down, they line up and they shoot him and he falls in the coffin. All of those came authentically from what Leone's research showed him.
They took a little bit of license, but he tried the best he could. He was very, very innovative. They made replicas in Spain and what have you, and so they got a lot of equipment, Gatling guns and things like that.
And all the cannons and guns and all what came from the military museum in Spain. And they were authentic Union Army and Rebel Army equipment.
I think the budget on this picture was about 4 times what he'd had on Fistful. He had some room for spaciousness in this movie that he hadn't previously had.
It was partially shot in Almeria, not totally. Was part in Almeria and part in the north of Spain, where was the bridge, for instance, or the battles. But the Spanish army was helpful all over the film. For the battle scenes, the Spanish government was helpful in any way they could.
Clayton said, listen, this is my 3rd Italian movie. I'll give you tips. don't get involved in anything dangerous. So he guided me in a way. He was my mentor. He took care of me in this movie, and I liked that.
Well, yeah, well, there was a few things. I was maybe a little more cynical about some of the looseness, let's say, about the shooting. We were shooting this 200-meter bridge, and it was an actual bridge. In the States nowadays, you'd at least have balsa wood or certain fake rocks. This was an actual bridge, and they just loaded the thing with dynamite. The Spanish Army did.
Clint said to Leone, "Where do you want us?" Leone said, "Well, I have a camera here, and one right near the bridge. That's where you are."
And they said, "Well, yeah, we have so many hundreds of pounds of dynamite in this bridge," and I'm going, So I turned around, and Eli's kind of going, "What do you think? You think we should do this?" And I said, "Sergio, where are you going to be?"
"Oh, I'm up on the hill with that camera." And Clint says, "That's where we're going to be, up on that hill with that camera."
He was going to be back up the hill overseeing the whole thing. And I said, "Maybe that's where we should be, too." So Eli and I went up on top of the hill where they do this. So I've got this golf club. I've got a pitching wedge, and I'm sitting, just for practice, I'm just sitting there swinging it, just to kind of something to do. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this whole bridge just goes wham, like that. And I said, "Oh my God, they must." And we all turned, and Eli says, "I think they must have been filming." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "They probably didn't have the camera running. Anytime you're ready, CB," I like one of those jokes. I started getting kind of cynical, and we started laughing. And then all of a sudden, there's silence, and all of a sudden I hear just screaming and yelling and screaming and yelling. And so we start walking down, and here comes Sergio up the road, and he's got, and he is red. I mean, he is not just, he is red, his face. He's absolutely going crazy with every swear word there is in Italian and any other language he might have known. We found out afterwards what had happened is because the Spanish Army had built the bridge, they decided they were going to let the Spanish captain have the honor of blowing up the bridge. So when the cameras were adjusting, one of the cameramen behind him was saying, they were saying, ready, good. So they were saying, vai, vai, meaning okay, ready. And he goes, vai. So the Spanish captain, who knew nothing about movies, he just sat there and he just said, "Oh, vai." Boom, and the whole thing went up. Not a camera rolling. Down where we would have been was really kind of a tricky area to be in. But it was the first time I'd ever heard the "anytime you're ready" CB joke played out loud. We went down to Almeria to another location for 3 weeks, and when we came back, they had rebuilt the bridge. The Spanish people, the captain, the army felt so bad they rebuilt it for nothing, and we blew it up again. This time with the special effects man, Italian special effects man on the trigger.
And people say, movies, and you get all that money and all, but the danger, when I told you about the bridge blowing up, or the acid in that thing, or the train almost knocking my head off, then you realize it's not all safe and sound.
I think this movie is very moral. When we come to the end of the movie, the vastness of that cemetery, I mean, the amount of lives that are just wasted in this cemetery that stretches to the farthest horizon of his introductory shots of it. I think there's a moral there. I mean, it's a standard moral. It's about greed and what we will do for a few dollars more.
What did he tell you about the money?
We really don't want the Lee Van Cleef character, who has been presented as a really evil guy, a thoroughly evil guy without any redeeming virtue. We don't want him to get away with the money. We actually kind of want Eli most of all to have it, because he's worked so hard and he's spin so crazy in pursuit of it. And I suppose we want Clint to have it because you wouldn't quite call him a moral figure, but he's always the objective figure. He's a little bit stepped back from the scurry of the action. And then at the ultimate moment, he will step forward and resolve the action in a way that's morally satisfying to us. That whole character is, I think, a very significant statement. The films were popular when they came out in the United States. What has happened with them over the course of 40 years is that people have begun to take them seriously as a form of artistic expression. These Leone pictures come out of a really benighted tradition. But they come out of that and they're good. All of Leone's pictures are good. For all their grandiosity and operatic qualities, these are movies that speak to my understanding of human nature.
I'm curious about why this has become such a cult movie, but they show it every 2 months all over the United States. It's kept my career going. People say to me, I didn't know he was still alive. You know, I didn't know he was still here. And I think, yeah, I'm still here.
I'm not one that kind of revisits films. That's kind of what I'd like to do with that picture. I'd like to sit down sometime, run the DVD, and just sit quietly and kind of have a little nostalgic moment. The laughs, the insanity, the good food, the adventure in Spain. It was all a wonderful experience.